Well, hi everybody. We're back with another edition of We Talk Photo. Here with Sleepy John. This is an early one for John. It's 7:30 in the morning on the West Coast, and it's obviously 10:30 in the morning here, close to the hot and smoky mountains of East Tennessee. And we're going to talk about location today with our dear friend who's been on before, Alister Benn. And
Hi.
I'm going to let him tell you where he's at because that's really what we want to talk about. John, you want to talk about the topic here today a little bit better?
No, I think honestly that's you, but I
Did
think
I nail it?
yeah, I
I
think
think
you
so.
did.
Wow. Wow.
For those that haven't heard of Alistair, shame on you. He's an incredible photographer and incredible person. We're so thankful that you're coming on today. What time is it in the day there, knowing that it's early in the morning here?
20 to 4 in the afternoon
Yeah,
now.
it's late. And where is there for you?
We are currently on the Isle of Lewis, which is the northernmost island in the Outer Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland. So we're about as far away from London as you can possibly get in the UK, unless you're in Shetland, which is a little
So
further. So
you're up at, did you say 50 something north?
59, just a little, round
Yeah,
about
you're
59 north.
Yeah,
getting close
well,
to the Arctic Circle up there.
It feels like it.
well, if in Iceland they have the great clothing company 66 North,
66,
named after the
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 parallel.
the parallel of
Yeah.
66. So you're
Yeah.
not far.
No, I mean to fly up to Iceland from Glasgow, which is quite a bit further south than we are, only takes under 2 hours. So it's really not that far.
Maybe you could start
But
a clothing line and call it 59
59 north.
North. Yeah. Well, it's good to
Yeah.
see you. And
And you.
I keep track of in fact, I watched your video yesterday. It was a real good one on the on your 10-minute guide to becoming a landscape genius. Good
Clickbait.
points. You left one thing out though that John and I scream about all the time. Slow down.
Yeah.
So if everybody watches that video that Alistair put up yesterday, we'll get John to link it on the show notes. Watch what he says, listen to what he says, and slow down and do what he says.
Yeah.
And man, it's going to really help you. If nothing else, you're going to have a good time out in the field.
In the spirit of the way I like to teach, watch it, take from it what you wish, and do the
Yeah,
way you want to do. And if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, then that's okay.
yeah.
We're not about creating robot
Well, the
clones.
reason why we love having you on is because we don't get into gear here once in a great while. We kind of get into what you espouse as well. I'm not sure we do it as well, but um, we're on this. We have this kind of mindset here in terms of creativity and getting out and enjoying where you are. So
Yeah,
speaking of where you are, and that's kind of the topic for this. John's really good at coming up with titles, much better than me. So he'll come up with a title for this podcast. But um, being, living where we live, and I'm just talking about the three of us, and I know a lot of people who are in the same boat. Um, really is conducive to creativity and being a photographer, and it's not just great things to photograph. It's stimulating because it's a great area. So I'm going to ask the first question, Alistair, and then we don't want to know your town and your address and all of that good stuff, but just tell us a little bit about why you matriculated from where you were on I guess the mainland, if
yeah.
it's, um, and where you were and where you are and why you made the move. I think I know. And we didn't discuss this. We waited for the podcast here. So this is all news to me and John and I as well. So
Cool. You're right. Um, Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent question. And I think it walks hand in hand with the idea that making the decision to be a professional landscape photographer is a lifestyle choice as much as a career choice. I think a lot of us who ended up doing this full time have had previous careers, previous jobs, some of them very successful careers, others less so, maybe other vocational careers. And for me, I got used to moving very young. I think even by the age of 25, I'd lived in the UK in something like 10 or 15 different houses. You know, I was always kind of moving with work or moving with university or whatever. So I kind of got into that mindset of moving. Um, and then when I went to work overseas, I lived all over the place. I lived in China, Tibet, Borneo, Australia, Cyprus, even in Canada and the US. And then northern Spain, of course. So I kind of got used to that in finance, sort of, you know, when you work for yourself and you can work from a home office, you're not tied to that location that you have to go to work every day. You know, if you're a university professor, you have to go in, you know, or you're a
Mm.
factory worker or you're a dentist. So I've been quite peripatetic, I guess is the word, for most of my adult life. So when I came back to the UK, I think I've lived in quite a few different places in Scotland already, primarily for the reason that they're beautiful places, and I wanted to explore them on my doorstep. I don't want to drive 2 hours every time I want to go somewhere cool. So, um, having been back in Scotland now, it's 11 years actually since I moved back to live in Scotland. Uh, so where we were for the last 5 years was on the mainland, a very secluded part of the mainland on the west coast still, surrounded by oak forests and so forth. And probably the biggest catalyst for moving was my wife. My wonderful, beautiful wife is Norwegian, and they have the ocean in their blood, as any victim of rampage will tell you. Anyone who lived by a coast met the Norwegians at some point in the Northern Hemisphere,
Yeah.
all the way to Turkey and, and the Middle East. If there was water, they were there. So her passion for being by the ocean, um, and we were. I mean, I've run workshops out here for over a decade, so I'm really familiar with the place already. And I think the thing with my career as it stands is you become a very public figure. You know, you're running online YouTube channels and you're running social media platforms and you're running the forum that I run, or you're bearing your soul in a book, and you become very open and public. And then, of course, one-to-one work, face-to-face, or workshops. Um, and it's almost as if when I'm not working, I want complete seclusion. It's really weird how introverted both my wife and I have become away from work. And I'm a super gregarious guy. I love workshops. I love teaching. I love giving talks, all of that stuff. I really, really enjoy the energy you get talking to people about creativity. Um, but where we live now, we look straight out the kitchen window at the ocean, and it's wild. You know, you just feel like you're living on the edge of the planet, and it's very energizing. It's windy a lot. It's been cold and wet and windy most of June, but we love it. We get dressed up, we go for hikes along the coast, and we don't meet anybody. And just having that complete isolation, I think it's just that balance, I think, that both my wife and I were looking for. Where we lived on the mainland was closer to Glencoe, very, very popular area. Going into the nearest town there, it was really, really busy in the summer with tourists. And while we do get tourists out here on the Outer Hebrides, nowhere near the scale that you do on the mainland. So that's kind of in a nutshell is you know me, if I'm like a Barbie, a bald Scottish Barbie. You pull the string and I'm going to talk. Um,
Yeah.
so you ask a question and you're probably going to get more than you wanted.
Well, Jack went on mute, but there was two things that you said, Alistair, that really struck with me. Number one, that for those of us that do this for a living, it's a lifestyle, not just an occupation, and that just those words ring so true for me. But the second point that you just finished with was having to maintain a public persona, and what people don't realize is how much energy and how draining that can be.
Yeah.
And so you seeking solitude to recharge your batteries and your creative energies just totally made complete sense for me, because I don't consider myself an introvert, but man, when I get done teaching, when I get done doing a whole lot of exerting a lot of creative energy, I have to take a break and restore. And the
Right.
best way to do that is away from people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not because I'm antisocial in
No.
any stretch. But yeah, that lifestyle choice, because uh, I think a lot of life is about commitments, either to our work or our families or other relatives or communities that we're part of, societies we might be part of. And those commitments they can be draining
Mm.
sometimes.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think my wife and I are a real unit. We work together. We have two offices at home. She's across the hall, and I'm in here. And you know that this is our work, and of course, you don't always get to do exactly what you would choose to do. When you wake up in the morning and you've got a diary full of commitments, then of course, your day is not your own. But I'm trying to strike a far healthier work-life balance. One thing the pandemic did for many of us was killed our workshop business,
Yeah.
for a couple of years. I mean, here in Scotland, it was 2 years before I
Yeah.
started running workshops again.
Yeah.
And, when that's your income, it's like being told, whatever it is you do, you walk into the office one morning and they say, well, the good news is you don't have to come in tomorrow, but the bad news is we're not going to pay you for 2 years. And of course, when you're self-employed, you don't have that
It
safety net
hurts.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So many of us had to reinvent our businesses and reinvent our careers. And so much of it was reactive. We were just constantly reacting to having things taken away from us. And that got very draining. And regardless of how good your mental health is, or how resourceful or smart you are, or committed to your work, or inventive in terms of finding new ways to make revenue, it's still stress.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think now
You
that we're,
worry. You worry.
yeah,
Is it going to come back? Are people going to want to come to another event with me?
yeah, and
You worry. Is this the end? I mean, it's
yeah, regardless of how financially astute you are, there's always that risk that your business just evaporates and disappears. You're no longer relevant. I remember having this chat with Bill Neal, who's just turned 70, and he's gobsmacked to discover that he's still relevant. In fact, probably more relevant today than he was 10 years ago. So, there's hope for us guys who are getting on a little bit, that we're not just going to become completely irrelevant.
well, I don't know
Fingers
about that.
crossed anyway. Otherwise,
Um,
I'll have to find another career.
so when you sat in your old location by Glencoe and you decided you were going to move, you kind of knew where you were going because you've been there, which is, well, you didn't just put a
No,
throw a dart on a map, and so you
no.
knew, and you probably knew the location. We moved completely. The house that we're in, it's a new house. We bought this house about 3 years ago. We looked like geniuses because we got a very low mortgage before everything went up. We didn't know. But we moved little by little. And, when we decided to move, where were we going to go? We wanted to get out of where we were for various reasons.
Mm.
And I had been coming here for 20 years. I have got a lot of friends here, and so it was a decision we made. But when we made the decision, it was very similar to a couple of the other moves I had. Oh, I remember I was on a workshop, and my wife called me up, and she goes, "We have to move." And we were living, John, at the time we were living in. I think we were living in Illinois, which we had to move to when we were living in California because Linda got transferred. So she says, "We have to live in Northern Ohio." And I said, "What?" When I used to drive to Indiana University from New Jersey, all I can remember is the tire smells in Akron where the Goodyear plant was. I said, "Linda, I'm not moving there. It's horrible." And it's Cleveland and it's So I said, there's a national park there. You figure out, here's the town, here's the park. There's got to be something nice around it. So we moved to a really nice area because it was pretty. It was out in the country. It was near a national park. So that's why we picked to choose there. And that's why we picked to move where we are now.
Mm.
Alistair, in a half an hour right now, I can be in bumper to bumper traffic in the Smoky Mountains, Dollywood, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg. It's horrible. But we live on the other side of the county, so we chose to live here because we get the tax benefits of all the tourists coming and spending money.
Yeah.
And we're out in the country. And you go, a mile from me and it's the banjos are playing up in the hills, It's pretty, but it's gorgeous. We have a beautiful view. And John lives I'm going to tell you, I mean, where he lives is so conducive to photography. I used to get angry with some of the people I knew, photographers up there. John, they are, because they grew up there and
Oh, yeah.
they don't appreciate the beauty that's within an hour drive of your house.
Mountains, deserts, oceans, waterfalls,
Yeah.
everything.
So I
So I'm
think,
very fortunate in that regard.
and it's all conducive to, creativity. Unfortunately, most of the people we know, Alistair, correct, on workshops think they don't see the back end of what we do. In fact, I kid everybody when they're on a workshop. I tell everybody, "You're all coming for free. What you're paying, what you're charging, what I'm charging you is what you don't see in the office, all the other BS that we have to deal with." And
Well,
I kid
so
people.
Jack,
I'm getting like the Unabomber. I told Linda, I said, "I'm not going to blow anything up here."
you look like a Unabomber.
But as I get older, I want to be away from people even more. And we managed to do that in this move. I don't think there's going to be another one, but if there is, it's going to be, maybe we'll move to where you are.
Hey, Jack,
We're full.
So going back to locations and being conducive to creativity, which is sort of the foundation for this talk here today, I think that we're all three very, very fortunate that we were able to either choose to be in a particular location or am blessed, like myself, to be a native Oregonian and have lived here most of my life. And um, but and we know that because this is our occupation, this is our living, this is our creative kind of reason for being in many ways, because we're not just doing this for the business, for the money, because
Right.
there ain't
Because
no
we
money.
do something else.
Yeah, but it's about that lifestyle, and it's about the mental health, and it's about the beauty of it, and we've realized that locations are very conducive to this passion that we're pursuing. I know that there's some people that are probably sitting there going, we've got the luxury of choosing where we can live. I don't, is what somebody might be thinking. I'm stuck in Akron. I'm stuck in Chicago, right? And so how do they build and surround themselves and create an environment that's conducive to creativity?
Well, yeah, I think that the kind of bottom line of that, the kind of ground zero of that conversation, is what does one define as creativity? You know, and that answer is probably going to be different for lots of different people. Um, there are many people who live in urban environments who vacation somewhere pretty, or they have a cabin, or they get up country, or they go on a photo trip somewhere beautiful, you know, in a traditional definition. Um, you know, I think the bottom line is, I guess, that our genre of landscape photography pretty much requires a landscape for us to express ourselves as landscape photographers. When I was living in China, I used to work in Hong Kong, and I used to take loads of photos for commercial purposes. I shot for Villeroy and Boch, with a German ceramics company. And they used to fly me to Hong Kong, and I'd take all of these architectural images that they used to use in their the material, their publishing material. And I found that a really creative environment to be in, because I lived in the country in China. I lived in rural China. So going to a big city for me was a stimulus to be creative. If you were a street photographer where I live right here, you would go insane, because A, there's only one street. And secondly, no one wants a camera stuck in their face here.
Right, right.
And there's no architecture to speak of. There's no culture. Well, there is a culture, of course. You know, there's a crofting rural culture. So I think this definition of what defines creativity for you is very important. There's loads of people who photograph macro or wildflowers in vases, even to do their creative stuff. But yeah, I think if you're a landscape photographer, then being in the landscape helps. And if you live in the city and you want to be a landscape photographer, that's just the price you're going to have to pay. Is you're going to have to drive out of town. And I know in the States, I've spoken to so many people where 3 hours drive for sunrise is like regular.
Oh yeah. Oh
Whereas
yeah.
3 hours drive from, I mean, okay, now we're on the island. I mean, I can get to Harris, the Isle of Harris, in about an hour and a half. But the prospect of driving down there for sunrise, just like never. I'd never do it. Um, so I think it really depends on where you are. I mean, Central Europe is super, super condensed cities, but there's pockets of nature round about. But people just head north and west. If people live in Europe, they go north and west, and they end up in Norway and Iceland and the west of Scotland. And given the number of people who are here, that seems to be the solution for most city slickers, is they flock to the country to exercise their creative demons.
Well, I think, as you were talking, Alistair, one of the things that struck me too is, in how we define creativity and also how we define ourselves as photographers, is that, I've moved away from sort of thinking of myself as a landscape photographer, and
Right.
I will photograph anything that has interesting pattern, shape, texture, color, light, whatever. I don't care what it is, as
Yeah, I'm the
long as
same.
it sparks this inside of me. And so that is a way for me to scratch my creative itch
Yep.
without having to fit within a chosen genre. Yes, I prefer landscape and nature and wildlife, but man, I will go shoot manhole covers if it's interesting, and I will have a fun time doing it.
I think that's the perfect answer to the question that you posed to me. I mean, for obviously this isn't a video podcast, but there's a rack of guitars behind me, and that is a great creative output for me. But likewise, I know plenty of people who live in cities in the UK, and they come here and they think, oh wow, this is amazing. This is so out there, and it's so beautiful, and it's so wild and spectacular. And they sell up, they move up here, and the house is on the market after the first winter because it's Armageddon. It's just absolute bedlam, 100-mile-an-hour winds for 3 months.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of people who they would go mad, or their partners would go mad if they were forced to come and live in this sort of place, and they would miss the theater, and they would miss restaurants, and they would miss culture and going to museums and galleries. So there's always going to be some degree of compromise where everyone lives. We don't get to go to any cultural events. We would have to fly an hour down to Glasgow from here to go to a gig or to go to the theatre or anything like that, or go to an exhibition. And Glasgow is obviously limited in comparison to London, which is a couple of hours away. So I think wherever you live, there's always going to be some degree of compromise, and they're just compromises that some people are prepared to take or make, and other people aren't.
Mhm.
On the other hand, though, we hear um, people come from, say, I don't know, John said Kansas City, and they'll come to the Northwest or somewhere, and they'll go, "Boy, you guys are so lucky because you get out of your car and there's a photograph here and all of that, and there's nothing to photograph where I live." And I have to tell you, I think where everybody lives, and it may not be, in their backyard if they live in downtown Hong Kong or downtown London, but you an hour away, there you just have to get out and find it. It's there, guarantee you. Put John or you or I in you know anywhere, and we'll find something within an hour or two away from where we are. It's there. It's not that I don't want to hear it. I understand what they're saying, but folks, you got to get out and look. It's there.
Yeah, when I
Yeah.
got back into photography about 2001, it was the work of a bird photographer living in Hong Kong that got me interested in getting out and getting into bird photography. And he used to just go to a nature reserve, half an hour on the tube out of Hong Kong, a place called Mai Po. It's on a big deep bay, amazing nature reserve, killer place to go and photograph birds, and that's where he went and did it. Landscape photography in Hong Kong is very, very limited, but the bird photography is incredible. So, and butterflies and insects and stuff like that. So, yeah,
The other end of the island, where Hong Kong. You drive, I guess it's up north of Hong Kong, up around the. I'm getting it wrong. I used to go
Cyclone.
up toward the American Club up there, where it was up there,
Yeah, there's
and
there's
it's gorgeous.
Cyclone.
It's
Yeah,
gorgeous up there. I mean,
Cyclone Country Park is
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
I mean,
Oh
they
yeah.
Go
surf out
there.
there.
You can go there, folks, if you're in Hong Kong. You know. So where's your next move, Alistair?
There isn't one. No,
But you're
we are definitely hoping to stay put here for a
Yeah.
while. I mean, we're getting older. I'm not, I mean, I'm in my late 50s now. Um, so I'm still a youngster, I guess. I'm still pretty capable. I can still run and stuff like that. But we're kind of my desire. It's really funny. This morning we took drive down to Stornoway, which is the biggest town on the island, just do a weekly shop. Um, and it felt like going to the city. It was we were there for like an hour and a half, and we're turning around and going back home. It's so quiet where we live.
mm,
Just so the idea of going off island to go to the mainland, or I mean, my son lives in London, but it's like, okay, you can come north. So no real plans to move. And the good thing with coming out here is because I've been running workshops here for over 10 years, you tend to take people to the same locations. Even though there are many locations, you tend to go to those locations just because they're a known entity. And the last thing workshop participant really wants is to go somewhere and it's like, oh, this isn't really that good. But what my wife and I have done a lot, and we've only been here 6 weeks. We've explored so much of the coast near where we live, which is not part of the circuit, is not part of the sort of more well-known places. And we have found so many brilliant, brilliant little coves and cliffs and seabird colonies and wildflower meadows and just amazing stuff that I would never have found had we not spent prolonged time going places that I had not been. So yeah, I mean, we're excited. We're excited to be here. It's a beautiful place. We've been here in every season. So it's summer now, but it's been cold. It's been really, really cold. I'm not sure what it is in Fahrenheit, but like it's been like six degrees Celsius, which is what's that?
40.
42,
Yeah.
you
40,
know,
42.
something like that. 40, yeah, 42, I think. I mean, that's cold for June. The sun's out this afternoon, so it's a real bummer. I'm sat in here chatting with you guys.
Well, if you're
I tell you,
here,
Alistair, the one thing that worries me though about your move, because I care about you, is I think it was a couple of years ago I read some article that people that live in areas with constant wind go crazy.
Oh, really? Yeah.
it,
It's super windy here.
it's already crazy.
it can, you know, if you're not used to it or tolerant of it, it can drive people crazy because wind can
I'd
be taxing.
I'd be really, really worried if I weren't crazy already.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
There you
Then
go.
I'd be concerned. It is, but I I'm still at the I find it really invigorating phase.
Yeah. Good.
I've lived in quite a few places that are super windy for prolonged periods of time, and I quite like it. And it really whips the waves up, and
Oh, it
everything
does.
just gets wild. And you know, the good thing with living on an island is that you can go into the lee side and get out of the wind. So, you know, if you live in Oregon, if the wind's blowing in off the Pacific, you're kind of hosed.
Yeah, you're
Um,
stuck.
you can't say, oh well, let's nip over to the other coast. It's a bit of a hike. Whereas for us, it's happening. I mean, where we live right now, if the wind's coming from any quadrant, I can get out of the wind within 10 minutes of here because it's a really intricate coastline.
What do you have in the future? Just to get off the location topic, what do you have going? Do you have any more
The
projects that you're
summer,
working on, or?
yeah, the summer, this is the first period of time I've had off where, I mean, off in terms of away from regular commitments. This is the longest period of time I'm going to have until the middle of September, without some regular, I have to do this on this day type stuff. So thanks for breaking that again. The and I'm starting to work on a project with a buddy of mine, and we're not ready to talk about it too much yet. But me and this guy are the best of friends, and we work really well together. And we're going to put something together over the summer. And yeah, that's a project that's going on right now. In the middle of September, I'm going to Dublin in Ireland to give a talk for part of the Irish Light Festival. They do a big conference every year. And then workshops start 1st of October, right through October into November, and then Christmas and New Year off. And then I'm in Morocco in January, and then the workshops kind of start
All
ramping up
over.
again until the spring.
Last time I was in Dublin was on a Saturday evening in Temple Bar, and it was a unique experience. But
The crack, as
beautiful
they call
city.
it.
Dublin's a fun
I've
place
never
to go.
been. This will be my first
Oh,
time
really?
in Ireland.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
we took the fast ferry over from Holyhead, I think, over in
yeah.
Wales. It was great. Dublin's great. Well, Alistair, I have to tell you, I'm so happy for you. I'm looking on Google Maps to see if there's an airport there, so I can
Storing
find my.
away.
You never know. I might just, you know, I don't think,
Yeah.
I'm not good. Don't worry, I'm not going to bring people up there to get the place populated on you. But boy, I'll tell you what, good for you. I mean,
Thank
good,
you.
good for you. Um, I won't say you're living a dream, but you kind of are. This
Well,
is
that's
not by
by design,
accident.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
by design.
Um,
I, I'm very much a believer you only get one crack of the whip. So, you know,
okay.
I
Yeah,
want to
well,
stuff it in there.
I'm about probably 10 or 15 years older than you, and you are right. And
Yeah.
I think the whip on me might have cracked already. So, but it's all good. And who knows where John's gonna,
who knows?
who knows? But I mean, in the meantime, John, other than trees coming down in his house, he lives in a great area, and
Yeah.
he's
And in many ways, like I said to you earlier on, though, that every choice we make has consequences, and there's going to be some degree of compromise.
and it's not
You have to
always
give,
there's good and bad wherever you
yeah,
live,
you have to give
what you
something
make
up.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I look back at my life and I've been really mobile. I mean, I've lived in all sorts of interesting places and had a very, very, very interesting life, but you miss out on building long-term friendships with people because you're not seeing them on a regular basis. And, even with the internet now and FaceTime and stuff like that, it's not the same as hanging out with a good
no,
buddy. And most of my friends are either a long way away in the UK or they're international, like Adam in Canada, for example. I mean, we love each other. We're the
yeah,
best of friends, but we
yeah,
live 8,000 miles apart or 7,000 miles apart or whatever. So, you miss that. Um, but you can only live on one universe at the time.
yeah.
So
It's good and bad. Well, I'm looking forward to see what you've got cooking because the last book, you still have copies of it.
yes, Out of
Look,
Darkness here. Yeah, we do still have copies. We've had a really good little surge recently. We've been selling quite a few copies. It's not, I don't push it hugely. I don't mention it every time I make a YouTube video or whatever. But so we're not in a rush in a way. But yeah, there's still copies of the standard. We sold two of the collector's editions in May,
Oh,
which was amazing because
okay.
it's kind of pricey. But yeah, we're still selling those, and I'm as proud of it as I was. I
good.
was checking up actually. It was March last year. You was the last time you had
Yep.
me on the show,
Yeah.
and I was talking about the book.
Yeah,
But
well, for those of you who haven't heard that, go back. You can go in the search box here on the podcast and just type in Alister Benn, and it'll bring you to that podcast. Where we talked about this book, and it's a great book, and it's got a lot of meaning, and it's too long to go back into again. But now that you've heard
it's too late.
Alister, if
But
you haven't heard the last podcast, please go back and check that out. All our podcasts are here on
Archived.
online archived.
Yep.
Anyhow, so when you get this project done, we'll have you on again. How's that? And
that sounds cool.
I promise you, if I decide to come up to see you, I'll call you first.
No need, no need.
No,
You're
no,
always
no,
welcome.
no, I know,
You're
but
both of you are
I'm
welcome.
just it's just so happy you did this. I know what
Yeah.
it means to live in a place you love. And folks, for those of you who live in an area where you think there's nothing to photograph, get in your car and drive for an hour. I guarantee you, open your eyes, you're going to find things, and it's all good.
And
Well, John,
it's really sorry, I was going to interrupt you
no,
again.
go ahead.
The other issue with that is we get very locked into what when I lived in China, it's really, really funny. When I lived in China for 15 years and I was living in Tibet and I had the Himalaya on my doorstep, I had the rice terraces, I had the Gobi Desert, I had all of these places. I mean, okay, it's a long way, but they're there.
Yeah,
Um, and I had location envy. Yeah, from all of you guys posting like Sean Bagshaw and Alex Noriega and TJ and all of these guys posting from the Pacific Northwest. It was like I used to vacation on the Pacific Northwest because I had location envy living in China with
yeah,
all of these incredible things.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
And that's
funny.
just part of it's this photographic society that's become so dominant in everyone's kind of mind is social media, clickbait, making images that are perceived to be, amazing. And everything just becomes this kind of phantasmagoria. And the bottom line is that's getting replaced with AI now. No one's making AI photograph where the prompt is intimate and introspective.
Right.
No,
Right.
Sarah Marino is not going to be out of a job anytime soon.
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
exactly,
Jen Renwick.
Yeah.
Um,
exactly.
so it's I think this location envy thing is so pervasive in landscape photography, and as workshop leaders, we're kind of part of that. We're saying, okay, come to Vancouver Island with Adam Gibbs and myself, or come to the Scottish Highlands, or come to the north coast of Spain, or it's you have to run a workshop somewhere. I'm not going to say, come to insert inner city area here. Obviously we're not going to do that as landscape photographers. So the location does become part of it, which is why Teton National Park and all of the American national parks are now permit only and all of those conditions just to try and prevent overcrowding, successfully or not.
Too
But
late.
yeah, but you're dead right, that there's something on your and that's what the pandemic was good for. The pandemic told us that what we have on our doorstep is photographically valid.
Yes.
And that was a big paradigm shift for a lot of people was, hey, I got into macro, and they were photographing verges down the middle of freeways. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, let's hope we don't have another one of those, though.
No, no.
You know, it was great having you on again, Alistair. I won't say you're a regular, but you're
I
as
think it's my
regular as
third
anybody
time.
else is here, and we just love having you here. We're gonna get you back when we do our when you do your project,
That'd be
and just
cool.
let us know, and we'll have you back. John's heading off for a couple of days, get somewhere next week. And I'll be sitting here looking out at the mountains for another week, and I get busy here pretty quick. One good thing
Yeah,
about where I live is I'm getting inundated with one-on-one workshops because the tourists
cool.
come here. So
Nice.
yeah, so it's good for that. And it's about 32 Celsius here today, just so you know,
Mm.
and very humid. So enjoy the cold one.
It's
Folks, John,
15 here.
anything you want to add here before
No,
we?
sir, I think you did well. It's just always a pleasure to talk to you, Alistair. Thank you
And
so
you
much.
guys.
I
Yeah.
love your insights into the world
Yeah,
of,
and subscribe to Alistair's YouTube channel.
yeah,
You will become a better photographer. I
yes,
guarantee you. Guarantee you. Anyhow, John, you'll put some links on the show notes and
always.
have you. And until next time, folks, thank you for being here. Any questions, comments? It's wetalkphoto@gmail.com. And we've got a couple great guests in the very, very near future. So subscribe and do all that stuff that people ask you to do. And enjoy your summer. Get out and do some photography. Get out and enjoy where you live. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Cool. Thank you. Bye.